Yes, we're talking about Kirk Hammett. Kirk Hammett has a special place in my heart. I still remember back when I was first learning guitar, tormenting my parents by blasting Metallica and just totally butchering their riffs and guitar solos in particular. It was really one of the first times that I felt like a guitar hero when I learned my first Kirk Hammett solo, and I think he had that impact on a lot of guitar players. So if you're new to my Habit series, this is not necessarily where I try to show you exact licks or give you tabs for certain solos, things like that. Instead, I try and parse out exactly what it is that makes these guitar players sound the way they do and why we like them so much. So with Kirk Hammett, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you, he favors distortion, delay, and of course, wah. But all Kirk Hammett memes aside, I think that if you can be recognized by your guitar playing without somebody actually seeing you play the guitar, which is certainly the case for Kirk Hammett with or without the wah pedal, I think that's a really unique thing and the most important part of guitar playing. But with that being said, I'm certainly going to be kicking on this Kirk Hammett signature wah pretty frequently throughout this lesson. So the first thing that I think is really interesting about Kirk's playing is that he is indeed in one of the biggest metal bands of all time, but he's kind of a bluesy guitar player. As such, he favors a couple different scales, which I'll show you now. The first one, which you're probably familiar with, is the Pentatonic Scale. We'll just use E for the purposes of this lesson. The next one is going to be the blues scale, which is that Pentatonic Scale, only adding a flat 5 in between each of these octaves. And then occasionally he'd dial in some harmonic minor tonality as well. Now the thing with scales, in case you're not familiar, they don't all just start in one spot. You can play these scales all across the neck, so instead of just sticking to this one area of the neck, you can play these same notes in different octaves. So having a strong understanding of not only the different scale shapes, but also where they exist on the neck and in very popular keys that Kirk liked to use, like E minor and A minor, that is definitely going to be your ticket to kind of figuring out exactly which notes Kirk favored as far as tonality is concerned. If you want to learn different scales from myself, then I would recommend Guitar Super System or 5 exotic guitar scales and how to use them effectively. Between those two courses, you'll learn each scale that I just went over. Both of those courses are linked down in the description. Also, I want to mention that Kirk didn't just use those types of scales. This is just kind of his habits. He would habitually go towards that minor sound. Very rarely did he ever delve into the major tonality, but hey, he was in Metallica. They weren't exactly a happy-go-lucky band, were they? Moving on to some more of Kirk's habits, he was a very big fan of double stops, and this comes back to his bluesy nature. That's a very bluesy thing to have a double stop, which is 2 notes ringing at the same time. Pentatonic scale, double stops, a couple kind of filler licks from one place to the next in the scale, but depending on those big double stops with the wah to accentuate it. And it's important to get his wah tendency, you know? It's easy to have a wah pedal and just like... Despite all the jokes about Kirk Hammett's wah usage, he did use it to its most awesome potential, in my opinion. The way he would swell into different licks to get that real expressive sound that really resonated with millions of people, which is why he's one of the most famous guitar players ever, I think should not be overlooked. So in the case of these double stops, it would be a real slow sweep from the very bottom of the cue up to the top. And as that was happening, the double stops would be slightly bent. So make sure when you are trying to emulate this type of thing or go for your own sound in the vein of Kirk's style, to pay attention to the way the wah and other effects that you may be using affect and impact notes that you're playing. Because, like I said, anybody can kick on any kind of effect pedal, but to be conscious of how it can impact your tone and actually make your own signature sound out of it, that's pretty hard to do. And Kirk was a master with the wah. Another habit I noticed about Kirk's guitar playing is when he would be picking, his middle finger would be out. I don't know if that was intentional, like a metal thing, like just F you, I'm ripping, or if he actually did it kind of unknowingly, but either way, he would use his middle finger, I think, to tap as well. So maybe that was part of it when he did his tapping licks, which we all recognize this, right? It makes sense, right? Because it gives him access to his pick right away. So by tapping with the middle finger, he's still got the pick in his thumb and index finger, so he can be picking and then get right to the tapping lick and then go right back to picking seamlessly. Another really epic part of Kirk's guitar playing that is always just the most satisfying for me to hear on his guitar solos is his use of the whammy bar, particularly during huge, maybe 20-second fret bends. Now, you don't need a Floyd Rose. He has a Floyd Rose. You need some kind of bridge, though, that goes both back and forth. That way you can get the bend in both directions. But he had an uncanny ability to hit that note and really just make it sing. It was just a thing of beauty, especially in some of the live footage that I've seen of him. It's one of my favorite notes any guitar player has ever played. And what some people will say about the wah pedal is that it covers up mistakes, which is kind of true, but it is also a tool to create a new sound. So I think that if you practice on clean tones, when you dial on that wah, it makes your guitar playing that much better. It almost gives you an inertia. So here's a lick that Kirk might play. So playing a lick like that is cool sounding, and I didn't really mess it up or anything, but with the wah pedal, it gives you this like extra boost. It's an inertia to actually make you play faster and even more clean with the wah sweep. Here's what I mean. Just a different attitude, right? It's just not necessarily a different lick, but it almost becomes one even though I'm playing the same notes. So that is what the wah pedal can do for you as far as a mental perspective. You can really transform the same lick into something else with seemingly nothing happening except moving your foot a little bit. And a lot of people credit James Hetfield with being the master riff lord, the riff writer of the group, which is primarily true, but Kirk had some really neat compositional contributions to the band over the years. I think one of my favorite parts that he wrote was, I think it was the bridge of Creeping Death, where it's a breakdown and it was like, I. So Kirk's riff writing was certainly influenced by Hetfield. How could you not, hanging out with that guy? But I think the precision on his riffs and the fatness in which he hit chords was really important to the group. That's one thing that has always made Metallica stand out to me from the beginning up to now. And with his riff writing, he kind of throws harmony out the window. I'm not sure how conscious he is of it, whether he knows he's writing a riff in Phrygian or if he's modulating up a whole step for a riff like that. But I think the biggest thing is the attitude and, again, that aggression, that minor tonality. However, he did take some guitar lessons with Joe Satriani, so I'm sure he knew a lot of music theory. I think his primary barometer, though, when it comes to riff writing is, first of all, does it sound metal? And second of all, is it heavy? Does the chunk hit? And not necessarily is it heavy as far as the actual tone, the octave, whatever. Is it heavy? Does it make me put on a mean mug? So there you have it, guys. The Habits of Kirk Hammett. I hope this was a satisfying, fun lesson for you to watch, and I hope you learned some things. I had a blast making it. Again, Kirk is one of my favorite guitar players ever. He may be one of yours, but either way, I think we can all agree that he has had a huge positive impact on a lot of young and old guitar players. So until next time, guys, keep shredding.